King Charles heads to France for visit mixing diplomacy and glamour. Greetings from royal family led my channel. King Charles of Britain pays a visit to Tom and Tool's Discovery Centre and Old School Close on September 13, 2023. Photo by Jane Barlow/Pool from Reuters/file obtain license rights. Summary. Visits Bordeaux on September 22 and Paris on September 20 to 21. Rebuilding connections after Brexit is a priority for Britain and France. Reuters, Paris, September 20. King Charles will be in France for 3 days starting on Wednesday. During this time, he and President Emmanuel Macron will try to improve the country's relations with the United Kingdom by using symbolic and personal connections. The ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe will serve as the official beginning of the King's and Queen's visit, and a flypast by the aerobatics display teams of both countries' air forces will take place. A state supper at the Palace of Versailles on Wednesday with blue lobster and a variety of French and English cheeses will be one of the highlights of the trip. Hugh Grant, a British actor, Mick Jagger, Arsène Wenger, Didier Drogba, and French billionaire Bernard Arnault are just a few of the more than 150 guests who have been invited to the event. Following a significant fire in 2019 that destroyed its roof, Charles, Camilla, Macron, and his wife Brigitte will visit the Notre Dame Cathedral on Thursday to seed rebuilding efforts. Then, on Friday, Charles and Camilla will fly to Bordeaux, a city in the southwest, where they'll go on excursions that include a stop at an organic vineyard. Like his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth, who spoke fluent French, the king is eager to follow in her footsteps and is likely to mention Elizabeth's deep love for France, according to officials. The trip is also an opportunity to mend relationships that have been damaged by Britain's tumultuous exit from the EU in 2020. He is a true Francophile, according to Adelaide de Clermont-Tonnerre, editor-in-chief of the French tabloid Point de Vue, which features celebrities. His mother was a legend. She had become Grandma Europe. Charles led a life that was more divisive. Charles had wanted to make his first state visit to France as king, but a March visit was postponed as a result of strong demonstrations against pension reforms in France, much to Macron's embarrassment. The 74-year-old king and the 45-year-old president will want to strengthen a bond that has already been boosted by their discussions regarding Notre Dame when they meet for the second time in France. When the cathedral burned down, Charles wrote to Macron, and the two also have similar values regarding the environment and cultural heritage, according to royal aides and royal watchers. They are both intelligent, learned men, according to Clermont-Tonnerre, and they both were forced to impose an unusual, widely criticized love narrative. After Princess Diana passed away in a vehicle accident in Paris in 1997, Camilla, now 76, became Charles's second wife. She will inaugurate a new book prize in Paris alongside Brigitte Macron, the spouse of the French president. The cordial remarks, courtships, and symbolic actions follow several tumultuous years spent negotiating Britain's departure from the European Union in 2020, as well as subsequent disputes involving everything from immigration to the sale of submarines. The jury was still out on whether France was a friend or foe, according to former British Prime Minister Liz Truss, before she decided to name it a friend last year. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who succeeded her, traveled to France in March to begin what he called an intent renewed. Parisians were still dubious about the visit. Muriel Mauve, 88, stated, "He's just the son, they are old already, and we don't have a long history." Alexia Aubert, a 15-year-old, stated, "I think that since Elizabeth died, the royal family isn't as important as it once was, and King Charles isn't as significant and symbolic as Elizabeth, so it doesn't really matter if he comes or not." Thank you. Please subscribe to my channel. In preparation for King Charles IE's state visit, France is laying up the red carpet. AP, Paris. After the trip was postponed in March due to large-scale protests against President Emmanuel Macron's pension changes, King Charles IE of the United Kingdom begins a 3-day state visit to France on Wednesday. The tour, which is intended to underscore the friendship between the two countries, is planned to be grand in scale. At Paris-Orly Airport, Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne will welcome Charles and Queen Camilla before they travel into the city for a ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe in front of Macron and his wife, Brigitte. The trip demonstrates the strong historical ties that bind our two nations. The French presidency stated that it is also a chance to highlight the superiority of French culture, art, and cuisine. The playing of both national anthems at the Arc de Triomphe will mark the shared sacrifices of the past and an enduring legacy of cooperation, according to Buckingham Palace, before a review of French troops and the laying of a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The acrobatic teams of the two air forces, the Patrouille de France and the Red Arrows of Great Britain, will fly jet fighters over the monument. After parading along the Champs-Élysées Avenue, the presidential and royal couples will drive to the presidential palace. The French presidency emphasized that Macron and Charles will have a private meeting since the trip also symbolizes the relationship of friendship and trust between them because they have in the past worked closely together to protect biodiversity and combat global warming. They will also discuss the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the question of immigration in light of the recent overcrowding of migrants arriving from Tunisia on Lampedusa, an island off the southern coast of Italy. While members of the British royal family have long since abandoned political authority to elected officials, they nevertheless serve as the country's foremost ambassadors as presidents and prime ministers compete to enjoy the glitz and pageantry that follow them everywhere they travel. The visit takes place as the Franco-British friendship has recently warmed up following years defined by Brexit discussions and related issues. Macron and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak decided to improve their military relations and boost up their efforts to stop migrants from attempting to cross the English Channel at a bilateral summit in March. Ed Owens, a historian of the British monarchy, told the Associated Press, "We know that the relationship between the United Kingdom and France has been challenging at times since 2016. The British government's decision to send the King to France aims to reassure both the French and British people that the relationship between the two countries is significant, is rooted in history and heritage, and that there are many other aspects of our shared futures that tie us together." One of the highlights of the trip will be a state supper on Wednesday with more than 150 guests in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles. Charles will speak to French senators on Thursday, giving him a new opportunity to demonstrate his linguistic prowess in front of an audience after impressing them in March by flawlessly transitioning between German and English during a speech to the German parliament. Later, he will reunite with Macron in front of the Notre Dame Cathedral to view the ongoing restoration efforts intended to have the monument reopened by the end of the year. Charles was very sad following the monument's spire and roof collapsing in a fire in 2019, according to UK Ambassador Mena Rawlings, who was appearing on French news outlet LCI. She continued, "It made him think of the Windsor Castle fire in 1992. Of course, it's an amazing opportunity for him to view this renovation, work with the Queen, and get to know the firemen who were engaged," she said. Charles and Macron will also attend a reception for British and French business executives discussing the funding of projects relating to the environment and biodiversity. On Friday, the King will visit Bordeaux, which has a sizable British population. He will visit the Experimental Forest, a project intended to track the effect of climate on urban forests, and meet emergency personnel and communities impacted by the local wildfires in 2022. He will also visit a vineyard that is a leader in the sustainable winemaking movement.